Good morning, good afternoon to everybody, and good evening to anybody who is watching from elsewhere. Nice to meet you all. I'm Sandhya here from Shiok Meats, all the way from Singapore. So, Shiok Meats is a cell based seafood and meat company where our mission is to bring delicious, healthy, and sustainable shrimp, crab, lobster, and crayfish meat to your table by harvesting it from cells instead of the whole animal. We are actually the first and only company globally that works on shrimp and crab meat currently. And we were the first cell based meat company in Singapore and Southeast Asia. Shiok, if you might not know, actually means delicious or fantastic in Singapore and Malay slang. And it is generally used for food and fashion. So if you like a really good dish, then you actually say that it's Shiok. And that's where the name of the company originated from. I think the fact of the matter, and we all know this, is that the world is in dire need of a good, sustainable food system. We are going to be 10 billion in population in the next couple of decades. And what we need to all be thinking about is a resilient, sustainable food system that has food safety and food security in place, and that everybody in this world is able to get access to nutritious, affordable food that is delicious at the same time as well. Keeping that in mind, what has happened in the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years, there is this new food sector, new industry that has been born called the alternative protein industry. So, in the alternative protein or alternative food industry, we have everything from plant based protein, which is your plant based meat, plant based dairy, plant based seafood, or the next arm is actually cell based protein, which is where you use cells to grow meat, poultry, seafood, dairy as well. And then you have insect based food and protein as well. So today I'm going to concentrate on cell based protein, which is where Shiok Meat sits. As you can see in this landscape, which is ever growing, there are more than 40 to 50 companies around the world using cell based technology to produce everything from beef to chicken to duck to foie gras to tuna, salmon, shrimp, lobster, crab in our case, and pork as well. We have a unique positioning since we are targeting the APAC market, so everything in Asia, Australia, New Zealand. And we have a unique positioning because we're the only company doing crustaceans at this point. Just to run some numbers by you, is that the global crustacean market is actually worth 150 billion US dollars. It's a huge market that is globally growing, and it's actually growing at about 1.4x year on year. Most production of crustaceans happens in APAC, especially in Asia. But the thing about shrimp, which is actually about $25 billion out of the $150 billion, about 70% of the shrimp that we consume currently is actually farmed and not ocean caught, for obvious reasons. Asia Pacific is actually the leading producer of shrimp, and the major markets that consume shrimp are Japan, US, Europe, Korea, and the rest of Asia as well. Given that this market is growing exponentially, when we look at the dissection of where these products are imported, exported, and produced, the top importers of crustaceans are the US, Japan, Korea, and Hong Kong. The top producers and exporters are Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, Spain, and India. And the top importers and exporters of various species is China. Given that most of the demographics of this market is actually lopsided to the APAC market, we wanted to concentrate on Asia Pacific for our products as well. So just narrowing down a little bit on shrimps, the Asia Pacific market for shrimp alone is worth $25 billion, and it's almost double for the rest of the world. Given that 70% of the world's population lives in APAC, we wanted to concentrate on this market where we consume shrimp in every form, shape, and size. Just not whole shrimp, just not deshelled frozen shrimps. We eat shrimp in minced form. We consume it as a paste. We consume it as a stock. We consume it as a flavoring for our ever-loving cup noodles as well. So shrimp, in fact, has the most impressive nutrition profile where it is low in calories, but very, very high in protein. So it's a well-loved protein that we like to eat again, as I said, in every form, shape, and size. But given that it is almost a $50 billion market globally, the shrimp industry has faced its set of issues. Everything from being unsustainable, where we have literally caught most of the shrimps in the oceans, and hence wild-caught shrimp is very rare nowadays, to overfishing, to the accumulation of microplastics, heavy metals, and antibiotics, to the entire extent of seafood-borne diseases. So given that these are some of the most pressing issues for the crustacean market or the entire meat and seafood market in general, companies like us are working really hard on producing the same delicious meat that we like at the price point that we can afford, using a different technology, but that produces the same nutrition, the same taste, the same flavor, and even the same smell at the end of the day, but using an innovative and sustainable technology that is cell-based meat technology. Why our product is great at this point is because we are coming in with an alternative food supply for feeding the 10 billion ever-growing population. We are coming in with an alternative production process, an alternative protein that we can consume. We care deeply about the sustainability of the environment. So our studies have already shown that we use lesser energy, lesser water, and lesser land. Our manufacturing plants can actually be grown vertically instead of horizontally. So we use lesser land. We can use renewable energy, solar energy to power up our manufacturing plants. We actually use water recycling so that we don't use as much water as well. For us, food safety and consumer health is of utmost priority. So we don't use any antibiotics or chemicals or harmful hormones at this point. Ethics in labor and human welfare and animal welfare is very important for us, which is an issue with the seafood industry. So no animal cruelty, no human rights issue, and of course, animal welfare is on top of our minds. Our team is experienced in various fields of the cellular agriculture industry. The company was co-founded by myself and Kai here in August 2018. And we both are actually stem cell scientists with over 20 years of experience in stem cell biology and cell biology. The rest of our team are highly experienced food technologists, bioprocess engineers, chemical engineers, as well as stem cell scientists from all over the world. We all have one passion, that is to make a sustainable food system for the future, and we're all working towards that. Coming to the technology, I guess this is the question on everybody's minds. How do you produce the meat? So here is a simple infographic that we have put together, and our patent pending technology is where we compare it to growing plants, vegetables, and fruits in a greenhouse. So if you look on the left, in a greenhouse, we take a small cutting of a plant and we put it in a nutrient-rich, controlled environment where we control the soil, the nutrients, the water, the temperature, the humidity, the sunlight as well. And at the end of a couple of weeks or months, what we get is real fruits, real vegetables, and real plants that we consume. Similarly, if we take the case of shrimp in our case, we take a small sample of stem cells from live animals or live shrimps. And stem cells have this amazing capability of growing outside of the animal's body for many generations, but we have to give them a conducive environment where they assume that they're still growing inside the animal's body. So we take and put these stem cells in a nutrient-rich environment, controlled environment, inside large stainless steel tanks called bioreactors, which is pretty much what you use in a brewery, but instead of brewing beer, we brew meats and seafood here. So imagine a manufacturing plant with large stainless steel tanks growing your loved meat and seafood inside of them without having the need to grow an entire animal and eventually slaughter it. So our cells are grown with controlled temperature, humidity, stirring, and we feed them with something called liquid nutrients. We call it media in scientific language. They are liquid nutrients, which are comprised of proteins, amino acids, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, and fats, all edible, all food safe, all already being approved by the food authorities for human consumption. and extracts that we have already been eating for many centuries. Like, for example, for shrimp, we use algal extracts, seaweed extracts. We use carbohydrates from pea or soy. We use protein from other food extracts or even vegetables and plants as well. At the end of 4 to 6 weeks, our cells get converted into actual meat. So what we have currently is minced shrimp, lobster, and crab meat, but we are working very hard on getting the structured meat in place as well. So what we envision is a bag of frozen shiok shrimp, deshelled frozen shiok shrimp with the C shape, with the texture and the size and the look that you require, and the mouth feel as well when you bite into it. Our products are not manipulated for taste or flavor. They're inherent. Even the smell is inherent. All we do is we take out the stem cells. We don't do any genetic modification. We put it in a controlled, nutrient-rich environment. And in 4 to 6 weeks, the stem cells start forming muscle, fat, connective tissue. And these are the mix that you require in the piece of meat that we consume. To go a little bit into depth, you might ask what these cells are exactly. So what we do is we take out muscle stem cells and then we grow them, or we take fat stem cells as well to bring in the fat texture that you require in these meats. For lobster and crab, we also grow the connective tissue because these are larger meats in general and they have a different texture when compared to shrimp. And these muscle stem cells are eventually grown in smaller quantities, then they are expanded into larger and larger quantities in a bioreactor. And like I said, they are fed with an edible nutrient broth or a liquid medium where they grow in billions of numbers, billions and trillions. And then we induce something called differentiation, which is basically converting these stem cells into muscle fibers or fat fibers and connective tissue. And at the end of the 4 to 6 weeks, what we get is actual meat that can be in your noodle dishes, in your dumplings, in your tempura, in your sushi eventually as well. So this is food and we had to taste it. We have to get the different stakeholders to taste it as well. So these are some of the dishes that we have made with our products. On the left are shiok shrimp dumplings or siumais, which are open-faced dumplings that are very common in Asia. These were made with our shiok shrimp meat. And then on the right, we actually have shiok shrimp lobster prototypes. The first dish here in the spoon is actually a shrimp pier, somewhat of a shrimp caviar where you put it in your mouth and it explodes and you get the shrimp flavoring. The second dish is actually a lobster bisque or a gazpacho that is made with the lobster meat and flavoring. And then on the right, we have lobster terrine with lobster caviar. As you can see, the black spots on top are lobster caviar and the meat below is made with our lobster meats. The feedback that we got from blind tasters, tasters that have never tasted cell-based shrimp or lobster in the past, was that it exactly tasted like shrimp. It exactly tasted like lobster. Even the smell was very familiar. And this was what we needed to hear. And we're working very hard on bringing our crayfish prototypes in this year as well. We are in Singapore. We are headquartered here for many reasons, but one of the key reasons is that Singapore is the only country in the entire world currently that has a framework for cell-based meats and seafood to approve it for regulatory approval for food safety. In fact, we are the first country to ever approve a cell-based product in the world. In December 2020, the Singapore Food Agency, which is the equivalent of FDA, USDA in the US, which is the Food Regulatory Authority, approved the first cell-based chicken product. This is from a company in the US. And currently this meat is being sold in restaurants in Singapore and even on food delivery platforms. On the right, you can see an entire news coverage, one of many coverages on the various Singapore/Asian companies that are working on alternative proteins. As you can see, we are here, but everything from plant-based egg to cell-based pork, to cell-based beef, to insect-based proteins as well. So Singapore is really pushing forward with the food story mandate that they came back with a couple of years ago. And they put together a 10-year plan, which is called 30 by 30, where they want to increase the current 10% local food production to 30% by the year 2030 in a land that is very land scarce for agriculture. So they fund, support, and invest in technologies like cellular agriculture, which is cell-based meat and seafood, vertical farming, urban farming, as well as plant-based seafood, meats, and dairy as well. So coming to the most important question on everybody's mind, when will we start selling, is we are working really hard, but we're building our first mini manufacturing plant will be ready in the next couple of weeks. And then we're building a larger plant that will be ready next year. And we're hoping to get our regulatory approval from Singapore Food Agency mid next year to launch our first product, which will be the Shiok shrimp and or lobster product in Singapore by end of 2022, start of 2023. And we really definitely want to bring it to Australia and New Zealand as well. I know we are working with the regulators, we have been speaking to them, and we're really hoping that we can bring the products there as well. And I think another important point of running this company has been consumer education. Other than speaking at events and conferences and symposium, we do need to go on the ground and speak to consumers. We need to speak to restaurant owners. We need to speak to supermarket owners. We need to speak to the purchase manager of a supermarket. At the same time, we need to speak to the end consumer, which is you and me. So we commissioned a study for looking at what do Singaporean residents think about cell-based meat and seafood. And we had 850 respondents, which represent the demographic that we have. We have a very diverse demographics in Singapore. We have almost all nationalities living in Singapore, but we did take into consideration the age groups, the male to female ratio, the different ethnicities that we have. And we found that 78% of them are willing to try cell-based seafood. Out of the 850 respondents that we had, about 40% of them have never heard of or do not know what is cell-based technology. So we showed them the infographics that I'd shown earlier. And out of that, another 60% said that they would definitely be willing to try as long as they understand where the product comes from and what it's made up of and how it's made. And the most important reason as to why these consumers were looking for an alternative to the current seafood and meats that they were eating is because of the lower environmental footprint. So they are more bothered about sustainability, environmental issues that are caused by the current way we consume food. And eventually they look at animal cruelty and then human health as well. Coming to my last slide, actually, but this is an capital intensive business. So we have raised about $20 million till date from various investors that have listed on the right. But, a lot more funding has to go into this industry. And I just heard a number that was very good for me. But in 2020, $3 billion were invested in general in the food tech industry. And about 200 million was invested in APAC into alternative protein industry. That number needs to go up if we have to, all work together to produce a sustainable food system where we are looking at everything from plant-based to cell-based to insect-based to sustainable agriculture and aquaculture or sustainable food production that's out there. We all need to work together to make that happen. And we're happy to see that a lot of large food companies want to work with us and invest in us as they see that diversification of food production is important. So we are looking to raise more money for sure, but working very hard to getting our first product out there. And we hope all of you can taste it and continue to eat it in the future. Always, I leave with this one sentence that we need to all work together to get the world to eat sustainable food. Thank you. And I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sandhya Sriram. We only have time for one. What the feeling is here is that what are the ways New Zealand farmers can invest in cellular agriculture to enable them to diversify their current business?
Sure. Thank you so much for asking that question. So, there are many ways. First thing is if you're a farmer that is growing plants or, non-animal produce, then we are happy to speak to you to use your produce as our raw materials for our liquid nutrient medium. So that's the first thing. Second thing is if you're currently a seafood or a meat farmer, you can invest in us, yes, but at the same time, you can speak to us about how you can diversify your production process. We are not here to tell you to run your business differently or shut down your current meat or seafood farm. What we want to do is enable you with our technology So your current land or the current capabilities that you have can be enabled to use our technology. Our vision is that we want to license our tech to any farmer, to actually an individual and a consumer, such that you have the whole setup in your home or in your farm and produce seafood and meats the way we do. So we are not putting anybody out of business or taking off from what you're doing, but you can produce meat and seafood the way we do. At the end of the day, you as a farmer know your consumers. You know meat and seafood much better than us. So we come in with the technology and you can help us distribute the products and work with us to get into a better sustainable food system.
Thank you very much for that response. Can we please show our appreciation once again? And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.